Today, I'm sitting with Katie Wells, and she is a leading voice in the decluttering space, known for redefining how families approach their homes with more clarity, ease, and compassion. She is the host of the top-rated podcast, The Maximalized Minimalist, which has surpassed 5 million downloads and reaches listeners around the world. Katie is recognized for offering a refreshing, real-life alternative to the exhausting do more, try harder approach that has dominated the home space for decades. In this episode, we talk about her heartfelt story of why decluttering became so important in her family, why traditional methods don't stick, the 4 types of clutter, which is eye-opening, and the tricky emotion of guilt that shows up for so many of us when it comes to decluttering. And Katie's new book, Making Home Your Happy Place, a real-life guide to decluttering without the overwhelm, is available to order, and you will want this one to help you deal with clutter, mess, and the mental load of daily responsibility. You don't want to miss this book. It is going to be so good. I've got the links in the show notes, but let's go into today's episode. Katie, thank you for joining me here. I'm so glad to have you back on the podcast. You have been a guest before, and I loved our conversation before, and I know we're going to have so much to talk about.
Thank you. So excited to hang out with you again today.
You have a new book coming out called Making Home Your Happy Place. And I just know how much and for how long you've been supporting moms in your community and people in general, creating good spaces. So let's even just start there. What inspired you to write this book? But maybe even the bigger picture is doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. Like looking back at my journey, I typically always start with saying I was not born organized. I think that helps because when I was buried in clutter and I used to go to the experts, they were all like, this is just how I am. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, this is a skill you have, And I immediately felt like I just wasn't ever going to be organized enough, or like, this is some attainable, aspirational, like declutter guru that like I can never be. And I feel like when we don't have that relatability there, at least I'll speak for myself, like it's hard to relate and take their advice, whether it's good, bad, or neutral, to like, how do we apply that to our lives? So gosh, years ago, I remember, I think a big crux for me that really made me drill into this is I remember standing at the doorway into my oldest son's room. He was about 2 at the time. And he was like, Mommy, like, please, will you play trains with me? And he was looking up at me with those eager eyes. And it was the end of the day. I had a long day at work, came home, and I said, no. I was like, not right now. Like, I have chores to do. And this was like my 10th time telling him no in like a matter of 2 hours. And like, I just burst into tears. Like, it makes me cry just thinking about it. And like, I was so far away from the mom like I thought I was going to be. Like, I wanted to do these things. I wanted to play trains, build blocks, read extra bedtime stories, but I was so exhausted from life, plus coming home to another full-time job, which was managing the house. Like, I had nothing left. And I was like, I am a no mom. Like, before my kids even get a question out, it was no, not right now. I can't. And I hated it. And I realized in that moment, like, clutter isn't just stuff. It's truly stealing my time. It's stealing my energy. It's stealing my happiness. And like, look, I think presence gets thrown around a lot right now online, and it's like being the present mom. And I'm not saying it's all unicorns and rainbows on the backside, now that I have way less clutter. But even still early on, once I came up with holistic decluttering and started making progress, I started saying yes more often. And again, it's these small moments that add up and they compound over time. And my relationships improved. I became so much happier. But really, it took me going through trying all these strategies that simply weren't working at the time, that expected me to have endless hours of time, that expected me to, like, I don't want to rainbow organize anything because I knew my kids were going to destroy it in hours. I didn't want to have to completely empty a room or a drawer. Like, I didn't have that time, and I got really overwhelmed when I saw the volume of things. So my background from a career perspective is in holistic wellness. And so our approach was like, heal the body from the inside out, like get to the root of it, right? So as I'm trying and failing these methods numerous times over and over and starting to think something's wrong with me, I thought, why don't I apply that same approach to clutter and start looking at it more holistically, like my habits, my beliefs, my emotions, like getting to the root of it, in addition to my shopping habits, which certainly weren't helping. And
which is also connected to something deeper too.
Yes, it's deeper, right?
Yeah.
And in those moments, it really started to shift. Again, my home stopped draining me. It wasn't overnight, but within weeks, even, especially months, I felt lighter. I really felt like after I became a mom and in those younger years, like my bubbly personality had vanished. Like I was just
Yeah.
like angry in my home. And that's because our homes and our environments are the invisible hand that shape our behavior, our actions, how we respond to our kids. We've all know how we respond when we are triggered by clutter. Like I do not show up as my best self. And although that slowly started to improve, melt away, I felt like I could breathe again. And I became like this yes mom, right? And I remember like months later, my kid, when they asked me to play, even if my home wasn't perfectly tidy and there were still chores to be done, I was able to find more of that balance
Mm.
between Katie. Yes, I can play. Yes, I can play. I can wait 5 minutes, play with you. And then, so it was really like this huge, not only change in my home, but in between my ears. Right. And so now I'm so passionate about helping other families, women, parents, like see what I couldn't see for years is that clutter is a symptom. Right. And once you understand the root, everything changes.
I think so many people listening, myself included, sitting across from you, I can feel that inside. I can feel that moment, especially when my kids were young and everything just felt like it was closing in on me when I'd be at home. And I would be giving so much during the day to my clients, and I was regulated, very regulated throughout the day. My watch, I remember my watch at the time would tell me that I was less stressed in my office sitting across from trauma stories than when I
Wow.
would enter the home with my kids.
Mm.
And it's so tricky because I think there's just this very real reality of how we run our homes before kids and
Yes.
after kids. And maybe we didn't have the systems. I don't know. I think of when you said like you weren't organized, I think of one of my kids, like they're not organized and I can see the struggle. And then when I enter into their space, I feel that struggle as well with them. But it really is just this very real experience that
Yeah.
it's so easy to feel that sense of overwhelm and then want to go to something that we can control. And
Yes.
in order to play, I think even this is an important piece. When we look at our children who are playing, why do they play? They play because they feel safe.
Mm.
They feel safe in in their home, in your
Yes.
home. They feel safe in your presence. That allows them to play. It's the same for adults and couples. So if you don't feel safe together as a couple, or you don't feel like you're and using the word safe is like this broad word, but in the sense of like safety being soothed and calm, our nervous systems are regulated. If we don't
Yes.
feel that, how do we even enter play? And
Yeah.
that I think is where it like all trickles together.
Yeah. And to pull on that thread too, a UCLA study done many years ago now found that women who described their homes as either cluttered or messy have elevated levels of cortisol throughout the day, meaning, I mean, cortisol spikes in the morning. And then for those
Mhm.
who aren't surrounded by clutter, it tends to go down, right? So it's like your stress hormones staying in this low grade fight or flight. That's our nervous system, speaking to your point there. And this is why, it matters. And I think too, I really think culture is a big reason why this happens, right? Like
Hmm.
when women see clutter as opposed to men, right? This study didn't show men reacted that way. So why is it us women? Obviously, it's a loaded question, but I feel like so many of us, I've experienced this too. Like, I don't see just clutter and piles, like, I'm attaching meaning to it. And also, we see where a partner might see a pile, I see 47 unmade decisions that I have to do one day, right? This cognitive labor and invisible load. This is why I say like clutter can feel like this visible expression of the invisible load and can create resentment, anger, right?
Hmm.
Just unhappiness in our relationships where our partner, and it's not always male, and female. It's not always oriented that way, but they might not see it, or they see a message, right? I don't care. Like my family is messy. They don't care about me. I'm the only one that cares. Or I used to think, man, I really stink at this. I'll never be organized. I stink at homemaking, whatever. And when we're stuck in that place of shame, resentment, and anger, we don't feel like there even is hope. Right? We're like, forget it. Like I remember telling my husband, I guess we'll just try to like have a tidier home when the kids are 18 and moved out, thinking that was
Oh
the
my
only
goodness, you're going
reason.
to endure 18 years of your
I
stress,
know.
of your
But I was,
cortisol, right? Like, that's not
yes,
possible. Your
I
adrenal
know,
glands
right?
will just fatigue out.
Fatigue out. Yes. And that's the thing with clutter, right? Every object in your home, don't just look at it. I think a lot of us think like, oh yeah, I can see it's stressful, it's annoying, but I think a lot of us come back to it's this very like kind of passive thing. But
Hmm.
if you look at stuff in your home not as stuff but as magnets for your attention, and knowing
Mm.
that the average American home has over 300,000 items in it. Now let me reframe that. 300,000 magnets for your attention. hits a little different, right? It's like, no
Wow.
wonder, no wonder. Like I get like goosebumps. I used to turn into like ragey, angry the second I walked through my door because I saw all that clutter, all those delayed decisions, and the meaning attached to it. I stink at this. I'll never have time. My kids are ruining my life. Like whatever. It can go so many different directions. And I was
It
like, oh,
one of the hot spots for us that we've continued to try to find a system, and it's not all on me and it's something I'm trying to let go, but you're making such a good point, is that when I see the thing, I go to 100,000 things. So it's around receipts. And of course, Greg and I are in business together. And so he's the behind the scenes, the accountant, bookkeeping work, like all of that work is his. And so the receipts then show up. And so it's not just about seeing the receipt, because then if a piece of mail comes in and maybe it's a catalog that he wants to look at, it's piled with the receipts. And then I think about all of the holiday Christmas items that I have to, again, I have to buy. And then it's the, okay, what are we doing for the Christmas list? And that it's, you've just labeled it so
yes.
clearly. They are magnets for our attention.
Yeah.
And inevitably, I think this is a hard truth. And it's not a blaming statement for men, but the hard truth is that my mind works differently.
Yes.
And women's minds work differently than men. And we struggle to navigate that. So anyways, I won't
Yeah.
go into the mental cognitive load piece, but I think that's important. And I
Yeah.
wonder, Katie, one of the things that I know so many people try to do is they try
Yeah.
to purge, they try to implement systems, but I wonder, from the work you've done for yourself and also what you teach people, why do these systems not stick? And I might be asking for myself because I can't figure out why our receipt system doesn't stick. So I'm mining for the answer here, and I can't wait to get your book, which is for people just joining. It's Making Home Your Happy Place. I need the answer.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to give you, I want to start with 3 reasons like traditional decluttering advice often fails us. But I think for your particular situation, it's less like heady. Okay. So number 1, what I found throughout the years and inspired me to create holistic decluttering to begin with is that, again, it's so many methods out there focus on the surface level stuff, and I focus on the person, right? Other methods tell you how to fold it, how to organize it, the best bins, the best labels. But what about that box you're too afraid to open? What about when you open your kitchen gadget drawer and you go to declutter and you're paralyzed by overwhelm? What if you reach something, pick it up, you know it's clutter. You're like, yeah, I know it's clutter. I know what Katie would tell me to do, but this could be useful one day, but this costs $40. I don't want to let it go. And back in the drawer it goes. And they treat all clutter the same, right? And I get it. Like
Mm,
everyone loves the one-off, like the spark joy. And I'm not knocking any methods out there, but I think when we expect one question or one piece of advice to universally speak to all types of clutter, we are going to end up with failure and frustration every single time. Like, not all clutter, speaking to that, is created equal. Some is superficial, some is fear
yeah.
based, some is grief based, identity based. Like it runs deep. Now for receipts, not so much, but every clutter type needs a different tool. So along the way, I came up with kind of identifying and bringing awareness to the 4 clutter types. When you use the wrong tool, you end up blaming yourself almost every
Right.
single time.
I have no problem at this point with my kids 8 and 10 getting rid of their clothes, purging clothes. Easy to do, in, out, in, out. I love
Yes,
gifting it to the
it's
younger kids in our lives, right? But
yes.
go to my box in the closet. Each kid has 2 boxes.
Mhm.
And there's that. I've tried to purge it a few times already. There's that onesie from when they were 6 months old. There's that one from when they're 2-year-old. So that's one. And then my husband still has some trophies from
Yeah.
his soccer days, his early, right? The kids got the trophies. They're now in my kids' room. I don't know why. But, and so like there's a sentimental piece to it. And then we
Yeah.
have books. Oh, Katie, I have a file still of PhD research. I got rid of 40 pounds of paper from my PhD, and I still have a
Wow.
box. And I'm thinking, but what if I want to look up that attachment study
Yeah.
by Simpson et al. In 1990? What if I want the details of it? Katie, I have not touched that box since I finished my PhD in 2012.
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm so glad you bring this up. So, with the 4 clutter types too, I just want to reiterate it's not about like opening a drawer and being like, what clutter type is this? Like, you'll know when you say exactly what you said out loud. And it can be multiple kind of clutter types woven into each other. So what I'm hearing is these sentimental items and identity-based items. So an identity-based can be the sneakiest, and no one talks about this. So I love bringing it up, and especially dovetailing with your questions here is it can be so sneaky because it's items attached to who we were. And think about all the seasons in life. And like, it's funny you said he kept the trophies in the kids' room, because my husband and I really preserved that. We each had trophy. Mine was bigger. Mine was bigger than my husband's. So I always was like, mine's better. I'm not immature at all. And so I displayed that as a way to have that item do what I wanted it to do with the meaning that I kept assigning to it. It made me feel good. My kids liked it. They were like, cool, mom's trophy. And then my other kid got my husband's trophies. And that really, really meant a lot to me until really just a few years ago. This is a trophy I've had since I was 10. It was like the only trophy I ever got. So that makes it more special, right?
Of course.
And it reminded me of when I was the fastest person in my tri-state area and all these things. And I was so proud of myself. I remember how my parents felt when I got that trophy. It's like, again, the meaning and the feelings associated with it. And I was proud of that. And then like it broke. Like I picked it up to dust around it and it like crumbled into pieces. And I was like, I don't even care. I don't care. Like I've moved on. And the answer isn't always letting go. I'm not saying that all decisions should lead to you letting go. Sometimes the next right step is repurposing the item, putting it out like your husband did. I love that. And,
The kids
speaking to
love it
those.
too. And we love the
Yeah, they
story that comes
do.
with it in this season. And I recognize
Yes.
that's probably going to change over time.
Yeah. So for identity clutter, and you can really apply this towards sentimental clutter too, I use kind of 3 different S words. So story, season, self. So you can start by asking yourself, looking at your trophies or your PhD papers where you're like, our brain's really good at justifying all the reasons to keep it. What if I want to look it up, right? So what story have I tied to this item? And is it one that I still want to live? So my guess is, and I don't know for sure because I'm not in your head, that a story you might be telling yourself is, if I let this last box of paper go, does it mean like, did that even happen? Where's the physical representation and symbolism of some of the hardest, most fulfilling, purposeful, intense blood, sweat, and tears years of my life? Where does that physical representation go?
Ooh.
And so that story, it's not like ruminating. We're not like thinking about it every morning when we wake up, but kind of pulling that thread and getting it to the forefront of your mind to go like, is this story true? Right? Is it true that whatever I'm thinking is going to happen if I let this box of papers go? Season. So season is, does this fit my season of life right now? Again, speaking to the different seasons of motherhood and life and careers and moving across the country and all these different things. Sometimes we're just in a different season. I'll give you an example. I once bought a pair of running shoes in hopes of running a marathon. This was pre-kids. I bought these shoes and my husband's a runner and he was like, you only use these shoes for running. That's the rule. You don't use them for walking, anything else. So I had kids and I didn't ever train for my marathon because I was busy, right? I was in a different season. Yet every time I walked into my closet to get dressed, I saw those shoes and it reminded me of I hadn't done what I told myself I was going to do. And it really always left me with a little singe of disappointment about myself. And also too, I was in that season where I was like, I'm never going to get out. My kids are going to be young forever. I'm going to be covered in poop and spit up forever. Right. And so I was just like, that was the story in season. And so in that moment, I was like, I'm not in the season where I'm willing to run a marathon. I'm going to put that dream to rest. And I'm going to give myself a new one. And I was like, even though these are running shoes, I can still run in them. I can break the rules. So those became my like taking the kids, putting them in the stroller. Those became my walking shoes. And all of a sudden they went from reminded me of something and gap between my reality and the expectation into these were no longer clutter because they were actively being used. They were supporting me, my life, my goals. And that was just a switch I made in my head. And that is so powerful. And then the final one, if you even get there in the little framework, is self. Does this align with who I am today or who someone told me I should be, who I want to be? And so I think those 3 questions, and sometimes just one of them, right, can help you cut through really fast.
When I think of that box, it is that sense of, I mean, first I often ask myself, well, what if I want to write this big, long research paper on, right? And because access to journals is so difficult, I tell myself that I'm still going to need it in some way. I'm not. And the reality is, I don't do research anymore. That's not who I am. So it is kind of connected to my
Mm,
identity, to the change in my
yeah.
identity from who I was before. And then also the other piece is, yeah, that was a hard season in my life. And if
Yeah.
I let go of it, do I have proof of it? Of course I do. But yeah, it's really interesting. I really love those three S's and how it's like, okay, can we understand what this is? I wonder if we could connect this into the idea of whether this was a gift or it
Hmm.
was expensive or what if I
Mm,
need it someday? Like, how do you
yeah.
move through some of those thoughts? And I know so many people can relate to that, especially the gift piece.
Ooh, gift piece. Yes. So
Like, there's
gift piece.
something attached to morality in there,
Yeah.
isn't it? Like, if you receive
Oh,
it a
yeah.
gift and
Yes.
you're given this family painting and you're like, "Oh, okay, well, red's not really my color scheme in my house," and then you hang it up because that's what you're supposed to do, and then every time you look at it, like, just,
Yeah.
ugh.
Yeah, and so I think again, speaking to I think defining the issue, I feel like a lot of things that we say are sentimental, like they came from Aunt Karen or they came from your partner, and we keep them, but we don't use them because we don't like them. Like, oh, it's sentimental. But really, at the heart of it, if you just ask yourself this one question, you'll know if it's truly sentimental or not. And that is, if it weren't for the guilt, would I still keep this? So,
Hmm,
really, and I talk more about this in the book, guilt clutter tends to masquerade as sentimental.
it does.
And at the crux, at the heart, at the root of it, so many of us struggle to let go of this because of the meaning we're assigning the action of letting go, right?
Okay, wait, hang on. So, I'm
Yes.
like, just that I wanna sink into that guilt a bit more. What if
Yeah.
they die? What if they're no longer here? How will I remember them? Yeah, you see? Or it's like,
Hmm.
what it or even that's like kind of the worst case scenario, or what if they come over and ask about it and I don't have it anymore?
I mean, you know your family best. I will say, I personally decided in my journey that my progress, I wasn't going to let it hinge on other people's expectation of me. And boy, do we have so much clutter in our lives because of that,
Oh,
right? You know, the reality is, think about when you give someone a gift, Dr. Tracy. Think of the meaning behind that gift. This is a gift to show you, I appreciate you. I
yes.
love you. You've done something for me. Like, it brings tears to my eyes. We have the holidays coming up or just wrapped up depending on when this is coming out, and it's like, think about gifts you received and like, like it's about connection. I
Mm,
would never expect you to keep a gift if it was burdening you. Now,
mm.
will Aunt Karen, twice removed, care when she comes over for family dinner and asks you where that scarf she gave you from 2006
Maybe it's
was?
not Aunt
Maybe she'll be
Karen, Katie,
upset.
but maybe it's your mother-in-law who picked out
Yes.
the
Yeah, there you
worst
go.
scarf, knowing that red is absolutely not your color, but she picked it out
I
anyways because
know.
every year she gets you the red thing. That's not my mother-in-law, by the way, but,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the stories I've heard of,
Yes.
I'm sure she chooses the worst gift and gives it to me and then expects me to wear it.
It's true, it's true, and again, that's your lane, not mine. I feel like I know you have great advice. You were on my show, we talked about this,
Yes.
but I think just, like, you have to do what is best for you, and sometimes that might mean keeping in a box for a few years until they forget about it, fine, whatever. I mean, the reality is decluttering doesn't happen all at once, it happens in layers, it's a skill, and just like, I often use the analogy of like working out. When you go to start working out and lifting weights, you don't start with by picking up a 50-pound dumbbell. You start
No.
with like a 5, right? And so we start with the easiest clutter, the superficial clutter, where there's no attachment, no what ifs. And then we kind of, grow that muscle through repetition and heading into the deeper
Mm.
clutter with the right tools. But I think just understanding the intention behind gift giving, and also to the piece you mentioned about morality, like, you are not a bad person for not wanting your grandma's china that you inherited from her. And to the point of like, well, what if she passes? Or what if, and it's like, well, you could ask yourself, is there any other way I could honor my grandmother through a physical means?
Mhm.
I mean, the reality is, a lot of us have other things from our loved ones that we can put in a box and open once a year. And if that's what you want to do, fine, to remember them, remember the gesture, whatever. But maybe it's like hanging a recipe that you used to bake together. Like, what's more meaningful to you? Or the scarf she gave you that's not your color, that you really don't like. You appreciated the gesture, but I
Yes.
think again, the math ain't mathing when we're equating like moral failure or like I'm a bad person because I don't want this. It doesn't mean you don't appreciate the gift giver or the thought behind it.
Yeah, I think that that also bumps up against some generational pieces as well,
Oh gosh,
and how
yes.
we're seeing it differently. I was gifted something really lovely from my parents that actually comes from my grandmother, and it is a truly special item. At this point, there's two choices. One, I let my 8-year-old play with it, and there's a choice that she
Mm.
could, like, there's a potential she could break it. It's a tea
Yep.
set, and it's beautiful. It was my grandmother's when she was a kid, so it's 85 years old and super special. And at the same time, I could save it for maybe my daughter to bring out. I don't know. So it's tricky because I can think of some of these items in boxes and they do start to build up over time because
Yeah.
of stuff, right? And then our own stuff too. So I do think I really appreciate how we look at classifying it, how we also look at the stories of it. And then we also have to really identify the guilt
Yeah.
because that doesn't help us move forward. And it's interesting too. So, from a clinical perspective, when I think about my clients who come to me sharing guilt, I
Mhm.
often think of guilt as two values conflicting. And because of that bumping and that tension between two values, that's the guilt that you feel. So, that value, in a way, almost of living a clutter-free home, of looking after your nervous system, of feeling good in your space, bumps up against the value of family, tradition, generational offerings. But I really love the image here that you've offered too of like, maybe it's not the scarf or the tea set or whatever it is. Maybe it's that banana loaf recipe that you put in a frame because you remember making it together. Like that's really meaningful.
See, and I feel like if we want to give it like a super simplified strategy, one of my favorite kind of mindsets, especially with this like deeper clutter, sentimental identity, is the thought of, so I love museums. I could like live in a museum, but like not a Pinterest perfect museum we're spoon fed on Instagram. Not like that, but like I love art. And when you walk into a museum, what you are seeing is a story being told through curation, right? The
Mm,
museum curator had hundreds, if not thousands, of prints from the artists, and they're trying to tell you a story with clarity. And so when you look at these art pieces and like tears come to your eyes and the emotions, happiness, oh my gosh, it's just beautiful, it speaks to my soul, then why not apply that same philosophy to our homes? And if everything is special, then nothing really is. So a
right.
very tangible piece you can bring into this, because it's like a great bumper sticker. But then when you're like opening the box of stuff, you're like, well, I don't know. How do I gauge? And even in this hypothetical situation where you're like the banana bread loaf recipe, my heart sang. I was like, oh, I feel that. I used to bake with my grandma. We have some great recipes, that I've preserved, not in a
Mm,
frame, but I have them on my computer. That works for me,
mhm.
and from a scale of just bringing objectivity in it, like 1 to 10, the heart and body do not lie. So that
Yeah.
was a 10 for me. That sounded really aligned. That sounded like a great option if I had a box of all this stuff from my grandma,
Mm,
handwritten notes, recipes, whatever that could be.
mhm.
And you could just rate stuff 1 to 10. One is like, I literally didn't feel anything. This doesn't mean anything to me anymore. 10, you want to like curate your eights, nines, and tens.
I often think about stories and the generational passing of stories
Yeah.
and how the stories mean more than keeping that extra outfit. One of the common challenges that shows up in my community is where parents will say, "Hey mom, only one gift for our kid this year," or "Please don't keep buying things every time you see the kids." That shows up a lot. And I think what I hear you saying is we can accept the gift. We can give feedback, let people know,
Yes.
but
Oh,
ultimately, we
yes.
can't control others, right?
Yeah.
And so if your mother-in-law continues, I'm looping it back to my book, if she continues to show up with the gift for the kids, we give her the generous interpretation, this is how she shows love, and ultimately then you get to choose what you do with it after. And sometimes that
Yes.
might be about talking to your kids and saying, "We have so much and we're going to donate this so another kid can feel the joy with it. We don't need it."
Yes, it's so true. And I wholeheartedly, when you came onto my show and shared that, I was like light bulb. Like so many people need to hear this, because there is a point where you can feel helpless. And again, like generous interpretation, I really enjoyed that
Mm.
terminology. Like, okay, is this still I'm still choosing to believe in this generous interpretation of it's about love and connection, even though I've told her 8,000 times,
Yes.
so
Right.
it goes
She's
deep, but
not
yeah.
going to change. That's how she's doing it. I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of attachment in there too for people. There's
Yeah.
this kind of sometimes an older generation feels like, well, I didn't get to have these things as a kid, or I didn't get to do this with my kids. And now with grandkids, I want to do it. And there's so much
Yes.
meaning behind stuff, gift
Mm.
giving, the actions. And when we really go to the meaning and values, I'm sorry if people are listening and they hear some background noise, my dog is sitting on my lap. And because Lachlan is 12, he snores. So
Oh,
I'm trying to
is
like
that like old man and dog years or what?
yeah, I know,
That's so
yeah.
sweet.
Katie, I'm thinking for people who are in this kind of new year excitement.
Mm.
We're in the first month, and I know people are eager to change things. And so we're not
Yes.
doing new year, new you stuff, but we're
Yeah.
doing intentionality, alignment
Mm.
with what matters most to you. And I wonder what would be one or two tweaks that people could do in their environment just to help make a difference,
Oh my gosh. Okay.
besides getting your book. Getting your book,
Yes.
Making Home Your Happy Place. It's coming out February 17th. Get the book, but just to give us a little taste of what can we start doing?
Okay, something you can literally implement today if you haven't already done this. And here's why. I could skip straight to the habit. I'll give you habit as step 2, but really when thinking about the easiest way to make something a new habit is to look at your environment and helping your environment shape the habit you want to have to reduce the friction. So, what I mean by that is a great option. I start every single one of my clients off with this is to set up a permanent donation station in your home. At least one to start with. If you have a multi-level home, one on each floor is great. I have a 3-level home and I have one in each kid's bedroom, one in my closet. So I think like you can add more as needed, but here's why this is important. You need to give yourself less friction when you come across clutter in your normal everyday routine. We have hundreds of opportunities when we're resetting the kitchen, when we're putting clean clothes away from our kids, like, hey, this is too small. And what do we say? I don't have time for this right now. I'll handle it later. We delay
You
the
make it a
decision.
whole big
The clutter,
task.
we make it a big task because we're like, I don't have a
Mm,
free weekend because that's what we've been sold, right? I
you
need a
don't
free
need a
weekend to
weekend.
make progress or it's not worth it, right? Big sweeping change or nothing. All or nothing thinking certainly doesn't help us. But when you have a donation station, it could be literally a cardboard Amazon box you haven't broken down yet, like a garbage bag on a hook. Shop your house, you already have something. When you have a dedicated spot for that, that's both visible and accessible, because if it's hidden away, we all know what happens. Out of sight, out of mind. It's a very true thing. Then you can immediately dump it into that donation station. Okay, that is the biggest thing is that, again, speaking to, I think James Clear said it, environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. Make it easy to do what you want to do. And of course,
Mm.
once that donation station fills up, and once you start seeing, like, I will never forget. I had a client once. She's like, and I think a lot of us have thought this. She's like, it's not me, it's my husband. He's got all the clutter. So for years, she nagged, and I say that in a loving way.
Of course.
Like
And I'm
it's your
chuckling as a
stuff.
couples therapist.
I know. You're like, been there, heard that, right? She's like, it's your stuff. And I said this to my husband for years too, when really I didn't touch my stuff. It was him that was the problem, right? I'm like, so for years, tried all these strategies, nothing worked. And I said, does he have a donation station somewhere near his clothes? His clothes were a big thing. And she's like, no, I had one in the garage. And I'm like, well, where is the garage? She's like, on the next level through 3 doors. I'm like, okay, so put literally a box next to his dresser. And she said, hey, honey, this is a donation station. As soon as, if you spot any clutter, put it in there. And then, we'll head to Goodwill once a month.
Mhm.
That's all she said. And at the end of the day, she came upstairs, opened his closet. It was full. It was full. Why? Because he had an easy vehicle. He had a
Because
place
he's
to put it.
standing there selecting something and thinking, no, done, done, done. And it's
Yes.
just there in the box.
And I'm not
Hmm.
saying that's all it takes 100% of the time, but that is a great starting point. And then really the habit that
Mm.
goes along with that makes progress in seconds instead of weekends is what I call clutter audit. So clutter audit is where you are scanning your environment as you're doing normal household chores. You're brushing your teeth. You spot a skincare product you don't use anymore, right? Add it to your donation station. You're putting clean dishes away. Every morning I unload my dishwasher. You're putting the mugs back into your cabinet. That's an opportunity to go, oh, that mug is chipped back there and I hate that. I don't like that. Into your donation station, or
Mm.
trash or recycle, right? Putting the kids' clothes away, you get the idea. Cleaning, if you have to bypass 14 other cleaning products to get to the one you actually use, these are all moments where literally it stacks up to 2 clutter audits a day, 5 things a day. At the end of your month, you've let go of 50 to 150 things without breaking a sweat, without overwhelm, without paralysis analysis, and without it being a separate to do, right? And so just think bringing more intention into the clutter process. And when you have your donation station there, it makes it so seamless.
Mm, I love that. That is so good. And it is even those. So, our school at the end of the year does a gifts of giving. And so they ask for little trinkets or costume jewelry not being worn, um, any kind of toys that you're done with. So I have a bag, and throughout the
Aw,
year, I collect those items. And sometimes it's a small stuffy that's been shoved under the couch for months, and we move through it, or something that's not being played with, and so we just put it in that. And it's great to have that station to help support movement of things. And when I was listening to you, I was also thinking of my creams and makeup section, where if I leave it for too long, I keep telling myself, well, I'm going to use it. And it's those stories and beliefs that I buy into that hold on to the things. And I know your book is going to help so many
yeah,
people address that and move through this. And just to loop back to what we had said at the beginning, just to really
yeah,
feel like you can be that yes mom, to be connected with your family, so
yeah,
that you can not feel those spikes of cortisol every time you enter your home or immediately waking up going into your kitchen. So, Katie, thank you so much for being here with us, for sharing this. I can't wait for your book to come out. And I'll ask you before we end, what is one thing that you do every single day that helps you to be well and connected with those you love?
Ooh, that's such a great question. I would say, just from a really tangible perspective, and more in my niche, I guess we'll start there, are what I call resets. So reset is where you reset a space back to its baseline tidiness level. You can do it anywhere from once a day to 3 times a day, depending on, how you move about your home and what it needs. But I find that it just eases my brain, even though it's not clutter. You're putting, dishes away, you're clearing off the counters. It gives my brain a moment to breathe, especially after we get home from school. I
Mm.
really want to engage with my kids as much as they want to engage with me. And I feel like even if it's normal expected mess, if it builds and I take care of it, I'm much more able to have that breathing room to be engaged like I want to be. And then, kind of from a different perspective, I have put more intention into just laughing with my kids. And I know that's a nervous system thing. Like, we have to feel comfortable in our environments and our bodies, because play doesn't always feel comfortable to us as adults. Going deep here, right? I've done a lot of work. Maybe you can tell. I used to feel really awkward playing and being silly,
Mm.
because so many of us weren't allowed that as a kid. We had to grow up really fast, right? And
Right.
so, kind of to heal that inner child of mine, it just brings tears to my eyes. Like, I'll just have a joke prepared, or I'll really, if we start laughing, I will really just lean into it. And those just 10 or 15 seconds literally make my day. And I feel
Mm.
so connected, and I'm healing my inner Katie, and I'm connecting on such a deep level with my kids in a way that I know when they're 80, they're
Mm.
going to be trying to do that, with their partners and their future grandkids.
Oh my goodness, Katie. It brings tears to my eyes just to hear you say that, because I see the holistic work that you do, and that it's not just this kind of decluttering movement. It's this way of being and living life. And I just love that healing. I love the nurturing of your inner child, and then also the passing of that on to your children. It's so,
No.
so special. Thank you for showing up with me. You are always welcome back here on the
Oh,
podcast. You've been here before. I love our conversations. I just love what you're doing to support families and for people to heal and to feel good in their day-to-day lives. That is really what this is all about. And I hope everybody, for listeners to understand, pre-ordering a book is everything. One of the best things is that it arrives. Sometimes you get it a little bit early, before the actual release date. I know my book started showing up on people's doorstep on the Thursday before launch day, and I was so excited because they get to go in it before everybody else. So the best way to support Katie is to order her book. It's coming out February 17th, Making Home Your Happy Place. I can't wait to get my copy. I can't wait to go through it. And, not to point fingers, but maybe to nudge my husband to address some of those sentimental items items that I did not list here on the podcast. But maybe I'll do a little bit of digging into my box of PhD papers as well.
That's right. I expect an update next time we chat.
We will. I almost want to go do it after. This is the hardest part of working in the home, is that it's like, I often think of if you give a mouse a cookie, that book, you remember it? That's
Yeah.
me. I'll go and get a snack, and then I open the cupboards. I'm like, oh, we should take out some of those mugs, and then I bring them downstairs. Then I'm in my memory box, and I'm looking, and then suddenly I'm out looking and crying over the grade 3 picture of me that's all lined up with the other grades.
I get it. So relatable. Yes.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.